So as Leisha kindly introduced me, I'm from the University of Strathclyde and I teach on the Forensic Science Master's programme. Today I'm going to cover one of the workshops that I've developed for the course, which assisted in our crime scene investigation topic, and I'm going to talk about using Google Earth to make an interactive remote crime scene, and also the use of the Crime Scene Assist app, which I think most of you will be aware of, but I'll give a quick introduction to that as well. Also a little plug here, I've just got our Strath Forensics Twitter and Instagram handle and my Twitter handle as well. We've just recently started a Strath Forensics Instagram page, so we are sharing a lot of our activities and new course material on there and how to make the course a bit more engaging for the students. So if you want to have a look, please do. So before I start, I'm going to give you a bit of background about me. I got my forensic science degree from Abertay University back in 2013. I then managed to get a practitioner role at Cellmark Forensic Services down in Oxfordshire as a forensic casework examiner. So I was lucky enough to be a forensic casework examiner in the biology labs for about 3 years, looking at blood pattern analysis and biological trace evidence, which was a great opportunity to put my knowledge into practice. And then I managed to fall into a teaching job at the University of Strathclyde, which I've absolutely loved so far, but as you can see, I've only been in this role for just over a year, and what a year it has been. It's been a bit of a learning curve, not only moving from a practitioner role to an academic role, but also with the current circumstances moving into remote teaching and learning. But it has been great, and I'm sure all of you agree, you've managed to develop a lot of new skills and understanding of teaching remotely. So I am a teaching assistant on the MSc Forensic Science course, and I teach on the biology specialism of the course. So the first 4 months of my job, I got to be in the university and face-to-face teaching with the students. But for the last 8 or 9 months, I've obviously been at home and adapting to remote teaching. So adjusting the content while learning the content, trying to make it online friendly and interactive and bring my practitioner experience to kind of help educate the students in this remote setting. So in first semester, I cover the crime scene investigation topic, and this focuses on the key principles of crime scene investigation, crime scene management, and major crime. We cover the roles involved, common practices and methodologies, and obviously this would normally be face-to-face lectures with activities and discussions as we work through the slides. Unfortunately, we can't do that at the moment, so we've replaced these face-to-face lectures with recorded content, and we've introduced these live Zoom workshops to try and consolidate the theoretical content that we're teaching them. So we want to provide the students with an opportunity to show their understanding, evaluate the content. The recorded lectures have a lot of activities throughout, so quizzes and discussion forums, YouTube clips for them to watch, and things like Mentimeter to get them to contribute their thoughts and ideas and share it with the rest of the class. So what I wanted to do was create a workshop that really supported the theoretical crime scene content and get the students to apply their knowledge into a kind of practical scenario. This was also really good preparation for our outdoor crime scene practical exercise that we do at Strathclyde. So this was kind of an introduction to get the students thinking about what they would have to think about while they were at the crime scene, preservation, recovery, security, all those key crime scene principles. I wanted to create an engaging experience for the students, introduce problem solving skills and critical thinking, and get them to really evaluate the information that they were given. So I wanted to combine all the elements of the theory, but also have group working, allow the students to work together, and present information to the rest of the class. So I'm sure most of you have seen the Crime Scene Assist app. It's an absolutely brilliant resource. I'm not selling an advertisement for Crime Scene Assist, but it's been an absolutely amazing bit of kit that we've been lucky enough to get a license for a year. So we can provide this to our master's and undergraduate forensic science students. For those of you that maybe aren't aware, the Crime Scene Assist app is designed to raise forensic awareness and for people that are first responders to a potential crime scene. So it's a really great kind of resource that pulls information from all elements of crime scene management and approaching a crime scene, providing checklists and kind of checkboxes information to make sure you are following the right steps. So we thought this would be a really great resource to centre a workshop around, so the students could really work through and use their own initiative, looking at the different elements of crime scene investigation and almost evaluate a scenario using this app. And this is something they can use throughout their course. As I said, they've got it for a whole year, so they can use it in other elements of our teaching as well. So this is just a quick breakdown of the information that the app kind of talks you through. Excuse me. So you can categorize whether it's a volume or major crime. It covers the really key areas of preservation and recovery. So PPE, cross-contamination measures, thinking about evidence recovery, whether it's to do with the suspect or victim. We've got documentation, and also information that needs to be recorded to pass on to other members of the crime scene team. So it was great to kind of break it down into these steps, and it allowed me to use this in the workshop because I could break it down into different areas that students could work in and then come back and feed back to the rest of the class. So the students could kind of focus on each part of the app and kind of share and feedback to other students rather than them all doing like the same step at the same time. So this is what I wanted to really centre my workshop around. So I was trying to think the best way to incorporate this into an interactive workshop. And then I came across Google Earth. So initially, in my head, I had decided to do a crime scene scenario document with pictures, case details, and kind of steps for the students to work through. So I started pulling this together, and I just thought, if I was a student, I don't know how fun I would find this, and really put my kind of student hat on and thought, well, what would I want as a student? How would I want to get taught, and what would I enjoy? Like what kind of environment would I enjoy learning in? And I went on to Google Earth to just get some screenshots of like an outdoor scene. I wanted to make like an outdoor crime scene. And then this little tutorial popped up, and it was like, make a Google Earth project. And I was instantly sucked in, and all these light bulbs started pinging on that I was like, I could make an interactive crime scene. So Google Earth offers this amazing opportunity. It's mostly used for making things like tours, giving people advice on travel spots and things like that. But you can actually add little markers and little information bubbles. You can put presentation slides in and add images. So as I went through this tutorial, it was just building on this idea of a crime scene scenario, but to make it much more engaging and create this kind of central resource with all the information I wanted to put in to this document, but in a much more visual and effective way for the students to learn. And I'm going to admit now I probably had way too much fun creating this than I would care to let on. But yeah, it was great to pull all of my ideas together and create this kind of central hub of information. So as I said, there's a project tutorial that comes up, so you can watch this video, and it really is a step-by-step guide of how to create routes, how to add in markers, pictures and slides. So yeah, I mean, I can't fault it really. It was absolutely straightforward, really easy to follow, so I can't recommend that enough. This is just a little screenshot of the scene that I made, and I will be giving a quick demo of the crime scene. But you can see here that you can see an overview of your markers and everything that you add in, and then it comes up with almost like a table of contents. So you can see each element broken down, and you have the present feature as well, which makes it full screen, and you can go through each slide in your own time. The little red circle in the top right is how you share this. So how I shared the link with my students, which brings up this screen here, and which is great because you can send it to colleagues and you can get advice on if they have any edits to make, or you can provide the link for people just to view it so they can't make any changes. But I think it's great to have the opportunity to do both. So you could have an editable version that the students could add in their own ideas or feedback, or you can have it just as a viewable resource, which is also great. And you can add it to your virtual learning platform, which is what I did. I added this to our university VLE, and it's extremely easy to access, which makes our jobs a lot easier as well. So the activity itself, as I said, I have undergrad and master's level students, so I wanted to make their experiences a little bit different just to reflect their learning levels. So there was a bit of variation in 2 workshops that I created. I'm going to show you the master's level one today. The undergraduate one was a little bit more straightforward. I also had 25 students in the undergrad class, but I had 58 students in the master's class. So it was a bit more challenging to deal with that many students on Zoom and in a virtual environment, but it worked. We managed, we coped, it was fine. So the learning outcomes were slightly different to the application of the workshop. The principle was they were given a crime scene scenario, so the crime scene setup was exactly the same, but the undergraduate students had to work through the app and decide how they would approach the crime scene. So they would go through and say where they would put the cordon, what preservation measures they would take, what recovery measures, what documentation they would take. Whereas the master's level students, I introduced a first responder, and I gave them step-by-step descriptions of what this first responder did and how they approached the crime scene, with some little trip-ups and mistakes in there, so they could really evaluate what had been done at the scene using the app to see if things had been done correctly, if there was things that could be improved, and they had to evaluate and review that information and then feedback to the rest of the class. So they got put into Zoom breakout rooms. They focused on one area of the app each, so one group would focus on excuse me, the approach of the crime scene, another group would focus on the preservation and recovery, and another group would focus on documentation. So in the bigger classes, I had to break that down into multiple groups, and we just went round and got some feedback each time, and we tried to keep going round until we had new information from each group. I also recorded a session in Zoom, so I could have that as a resource uploaded to our VLE. And the Google Earth link I made available so the students could access this in their own time, which they really appreciated, because unfortunately we only had an hour workshop window, which was a little bit restricting, but it meant the student could go back, use the Crime Scene Assist app and look at the Google Earth crime scene in their own time. And we had a discussion forum set up so they could raise any questions they had about it as well. So overall, I had some really great feedback from the students, and hopefully I will show you why. So I'm just going to come out of my presentation, fingers crossed this works, and I'm going to give you a really quick walkthrough of my Google Earth crime scene. Leisha, has that come up okay?
Yes, it's perfect, Katie.
Grand. So yeah, I'll just quickly show you. So this is how it will come up. You have your Google Earth crime scene, and then you have your contents at the side. So you can add in, as I said, slides and markers. So this is how the students would view it. So if you go to present, it comes up with my very creative case details. So they get given a scenario. There's a witness that's reported finding a body, and this is Officer Fletcher, who is the first responder. And basically this goes through what Officer Fletcher does at the scene, how she approaches it, and the students have to review and evaluate how this crime scene was handled. So they get given the overview of the scene. We get to use some great Google images here as well. We have a witness and his statement. So again, a bit more information about how he has interacted with the crime scene, and again, what Officer Fletcher has done. So you take a witness statement and you get a bit of information about the access point of the field. I've added in a little bit of extra information that there's a security camera there, so getting the students to think about what information could be available. That could provide information on access, entry-exit routes, things like that, a time frame. So again, I'm not expecting you to read all of this, but it gives a bit of information about what's viewed on the CCTV. So again, it might affect the approach that should be taken. We then give a bit of information on a crime scene response kit that might not be completely factually accurate, but it's to give the students an idea of what resources were available to Officer Fletcher and how she's utilised these. So again, getting them to think about how they would make use of this crime scene kit and what they have available to them at the time. This is my favourite bit. So it zooms into the access point of the field and the outdoor scene. Again, a bit more information about the lock and the chain on the gate and how Officer Fletcher has approached recovering potential evidence. I've put in a potential cordon. Obviously this is far too small than it should be. There should be an inner and outer cordon. So again, getting the students to think about how this could be improved and how this should be approached. Chucking in a few elements of possible evidence. We have some tire marks there. We also have some footwear marks. Again, you can add as much or as little information as you want. We have some further possible evidence here, which Officer Fletcher doesn't take any notice of. So again, getting the students to think about, is that important evidence that should be recovered? And then focal point of the scene, we've got a body, which is partially burned. So that gives them obviously the inkling that the lighter could be a key bit of evidence here. And yeah, further bits of information about how Officer approached this part of the scene. I've then got this red line here, shows the route that Officer Fletcher took. So again, thinking about the possible entry and exit routes of the suspect. Was this effective? Was this an inappropriate way to approach the scene? And this is covered in the Crime Scene Assist app as you work through each step in the crime scene investigation process. I then put in a bit of a curveball and change the weather condition. As we know, in Scotland especially, it's very unpredictable and you have to adapt when you're at crime scenes. So it starts to rain and Officer Fletcher has collected some items from her crime scene kit and preserved the evidence. So again, getting the students to think about what is priority, what could be the most fragile evidence that could be lost, and how to utilise what they have resource-wise available to them to preserve the crime scene as much as possible. And we've got a little bit of information about our lovely witness Farmer Green's house there, and possible access routes from the house to the scene itself. And then I've just recorded a bit of information of the documentation that Officer Fletcher took from the scene. I'm not expecting any of you to notice, but I was a bit mean and I wrote down the address wrong of the witness's house, and I've left a few things out. I've maybe not recorded all the information I should have here. So again, something that the students can really evaluate and feedback after their discussions. And then this was just a little summary of the task they had to do. So they were allocated an element of the crime scene app. They had to review the steps taken by the first responder, had to kind of evaluate and feedback on decisions made. And then they had about 25 minutes in the breakout room. They had to come back and then feedback to the rest of the class. And they all did really, really well, raised some really good questions. I think having a more complex outdoor scene really helped because this was something maybe they hadn't really come across before. We'd focused on a lot of indoor scenes, so making it a bit more complicated and complex. They had a lot more questions, and it really sparked some great interactions between the students and some discussion topics as well, which was great. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of how that all pulled together. It is extremely easy, extremely straightforward. And I'm just going to stop sharing that and go back to my PowerPoint just for the last couple of slides. So here is a photo from our Strathclyde Forensic Science Instagram page of our lovely students using the Crime Scene Assist app in the workshop, looking very happy. They did not get paid to do this, I promise. So it was great to see that they enjoyed it and they had a resource at home that they could use to apply to our workshop. And I think thinking about the future, obviously this isn't something that we would have done in class, but I think this would actually be great for in-classroom teaching as well as it being designed for remote teaching. I think it would be just as effective. You could still do the group working and the discussions and have it up on a big screen and kind of do a walkthrough of a crime scene. And on a side note, I don't know if this would be possible, but actually introducing this as a form of assessment or for exams, it gives the opportunity for the students to really demonstrate and apply their knowledge. For me, especially coming into this role, I found introducing a problem-solving element into exam questions for this topic quite difficult at times. So I think this could actually be a great way, even introducing screenshots of a crime scene into an exam paper and getting the students to assess and evaluate that, or even apply their own knowledge of how they would approach a scene, would be a great way to introduce that element of assessment or examination. So I have no idea time-wise how I've done. I'm sorry if I've gone over, but thank you so much for letting me present my workshop. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've taken some ideas or some tips from me. And thank you again to the Remote Forensic CSI team for letting me present. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Katie. I think my voice is live. Yeah, thanks, Katie. That was absolutely brilliant. I loved it, loved it, loved it. Several other people in the comments section have said the same, how much they loved the idea. And also a comment worth sharing. I love Katie's enthusiasm, which I don't know. I've got some questions, which is questioners' prerogative to ask their own ones first. I guess my question was touching on what you mentioned at the end. I mean, how did students view the activity? And I'm thinking particularly in terms of achievement and attainment versus what you used to do pre-lockdown, or what colleagues told you they used to do pre-lockdown. And what key bits of the new experience do you think you'll keep when you can go back to that field and actually take the students out there?
Yeah, so I mean, the students reacted really well to this sort of content. This hadn't really been done before. As I said, with the crime scene topic last year, it was all done in classroom teaching, so there would have been discussions and maybe like some quizzes or activities throughout the lecture, but there wouldn't have been as much kind of independent working, I suppose. So that's one element I really like, because this was semester one, week one teaching. The students hadn't really met each other, and I thought it was a really great way for them to engage with each other, but also with the rest of the class. So being broken up into slightly smaller groups and actually giving them the independence to go off without being watched or observed by an academic. They could actually maybe build their confidence a bit and have that support of each other to then come back to the overall workshop and not be put on the spot as such. As I remember, if I was a first year student, it was terrifying if someone just picked you out of the class to stand up and present something back. So the students, they reacted really well to it. They really enjoyed almost having a CSI sort of element to it, that they could approach and evaluate a kind of crime scene scenario without reading. It's much more a visual element of teaching, which I really enjoy. And I think that answers the second part of the question. I think this virtual walkthrough of a crime scene is such an important element to keep, and it really consolidates the theory, because I've done an hour lecture on crime scene investigation, an hour on crime scene management, and I'm much more of a visual learner. I know people learn in much varied ways, different ways, but I think being able to see how you tackle a crime scene and actually apply that information to a scenario, and you actually get the opportunity to ask questions and think, well, why is something done like that? Why is it not done like this? And this really gave them the platform to ask questions and to really give them the opportunity to consolidate the theory that they'd learned and then really understand why that's the way things are done or should be done. But yeah, it gave them a chance to ask some really, really good questions and hear from their fellow students as well. I'm sorry, Ian, but there was a third part of your question, or?
That's absolutely fine, Kate, thank you. There's a comment coming from Melanie, which will wrap into my second question, which is the more practical one about resource. So first of all, Melanie's just asking about Google Earth. Does it have a fee associated with it? And then more practically, I mean, how much time did it take for you to not necessarily build, but plan the sort of the pedagogy behind this exercise? Because it looks fantastic. Just wonder how long it took to put together.
Perfect. There is no fee at all, which I think is why I am such an advocate for this resource. It is completely free, and you can make it as long as you want, as short as you want, and it gives you the opportunity to add images from Google Earth, and I think it takes away that whole kind of copyright element that you're kind of worried about using images from the internet and things like that. So it's all linked into Google. It's all completely free. Time-wise, it didn't actually take as long as I thought it would, and maybe I'm remembering that slightly wrong because I had so much fun doing it. But it makes it so functional and so easy to work through. And I think I kind of introduced part of my practitioner experience, but also working through my lectures, I was just looking at the learning objectives and what I wanted the students to gain out of this. So I kind of had that review of the theory and really got them to use the app to apply their knowledge, and it kind of just grew arms and legs a little bit. I started off with quite a basic crime scene, and I just added in little elements like the weather slide where it started to rain and they had to think about how they would adapt. So I would say it probably took me a couple of hours to pull all that together, and from that couple of hours it's created such a good resource and a whole workshop that I'm definitely going to use in future.
Thank you. There are some questions on the private part which I can't publish. So I'll make this the last question, if I may, and it's a good one. It's from Felicity. So, what crime scene would you like to make on Google Earth? Thinking back to your career history, what would you like to replicate on Google Earth?
Wow. I mean, I love the idea of an outdoor crime scene. I just think it introduces so many more aspects of kind of complexity and crime scene strategy and adaptability, because you don't really know what could happen. You're open to the elements. So I do like the idea of maybe introducing like a vehicle potentially. I think there are some limitations with Google Earth. I mean, I just picked a random outdoor. I feel terrible. I was like, what if this could be someone's house on Google Earth that I've picked and I've made it into a crime scene? But you have so much flexibility with making it at the side of a building, or yeah, I obviously chose like a field. I think it would be great if we could do an indoor type one like this, if we had access to inside like a warehouse or yeah, like an office space, some kind of inside crime scene would be really great, or a car park, something like that. Because again, you have that element of public access, the media. But I do really like the idea of the outdoor crime scenes with being open to the elements, multiple access and entry exit routes. Maybe like in a forest or a woodland scene would be quite interesting. I'll have to think about it. Thanks, Felicity, for getting my brain working on more crime scenes for the next time.
Thank you very much, Katie. There are a few other comments and questions in the Q&A thing you may like to have a look at whilst the next talk is going on, but all very positive, and thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.